What do you think of when you think of deception? How common do you think it actually is? The world around us wants to deceive us. Moreover, the world wants to think for us, where we are massaged to sleep, standing for nothing. We have to realize that an absence of feeling can be a dangerous tool of deception. The sleeping senses can be just as misleading as the awakened ones. For instance, if your sense for the good is asleep, you may not walk with the good upon receiving the invitation. Moreover, if your sense for a threat or danger is asleep, then you may let a murderer into your home because you are not superstitious of his reality. Wholehearted evil can manipulate you by what you don't feel, perhaps even more effectively than with what you do. For if wholehearted evil, if it can navigate in the places where it triggers no alarms, then evil can grow in places where it triggers no alarms. Whenever we feel nothing, it is easy to let the world think for us. There in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2, it says, "Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you will be able to test and approve what is God's will, what is good, pleasing, and perfect." When we look to the gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16, it says, "Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves." And you know, that's an important lesson. There's a man that I respect who once said, "The problem with being in the middle of the road is that you get attacked from both sides." And while I respect him, I actually think he's wrong on this. The problem with being in the middle of the road is that you might sway to either side. You see, you might be deceived into believing that you are virtuous when you are actually unprincipled. You might think that you are being good when you are actually lukewarm. The world is always going to try to attack you. That's okay. That's fine. On the day of judgment, we're not going to have to give an account on what the world did against us. But we will have to give a real account for what is going on in our own soul and our own actions. Did you declare truth? Or were you deceived by the false virtue of neutrality? That perspectives, balanced opinions, caring more about expertise and bias was more important than truth. You see, in the path that we're on now, if you want to be righteous, you are going to have to be someone who is willing to declare truth and realize that deception is everywhere. We have to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We don't want to be deceived into thinking that it's good to never declare what is true, and therefore find ourselves mistaking being lukewarm for the straight and narrow pathway. Because that's an easy trap to fall into, where we think being on the straight and narrow means we're in the middle where we never declare what is true. That in fact is not the case. And you see, the world around us, it wants to deceive us by having us never actually think about what is true. So, what are you going to do? Even though it's going to cause division, are you willing to speak truth? It will make you unpopular with the world, and we have to be wise to this. We can look there in the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 16, verse 8, and that scripture teaches us that the children of this world are, in their own generation, wiser than the children of light. And now the King James does a great job translating this because it really speaks to the truth of the matter. Those who are not walking in godly thinking, they are wiser in the eyes of the world and more effective in their deception than are those who are walking in the light. And a lot of times, people who are walking in the light are completely unaware of the deception around them. That is, if they're not really in tune with the truths and revelation of God. And those who are walking in the ways of the world and worldly thinking, they operate unrestrained, which does give them a huge advantage over the children of light. We have to realize that those who walk in the darkness, they have no limits on how they will lie, how often they will lie, and they are very good at lying. Just because a few children might be bad about lying about the cookie jar doesn't mean there aren't effective Trojan horses in the world around us. They will lie to you in ways that make you feel as if, well, you're not being lied to, and slip in unnoticed. The great work of a prophet is sometimes just saying the quiet part out loud, stating to people that their eyes are really seeing what they are seeing. You see, fallen creation, it wants us to focus on anything but the truth. One of the reasons it wants to do this is because, well, if we're not focused on truth, then we're sautéed, well seasoned to be eaten by the forces of deception. Fallen creation, it wants us to focus in on ourselves. Not for the purpose of self-reflection or self-awareness, mind you, but for the purpose of training us to accept deception because we are ignoring truths that are larger than ourselves. Fallen creation wants us to focus inward and believe that the presence of goodness can be measured in our emotional response. The darkness wants you to believe that something can be determined good or true based on which senses are awakened or left asleep. And sometimes we are fooled by the flashy packaging. That is certainly true. But people can learn to see past that. And even more destructive are the things which go ignored, the things which produce no sensation at all. And with that, we have to realize that we don't need to be quick to make a formula that says truth can be measured in what is felt or not felt. We don't want to fool ourselves into thinking that if something is true, then it will feel cold or hell, coming with that smell of officiality and that seal of approval. Because if we believe that something must feel or not feel a certain way in order to be true, that is folly. And we must remember that Jesus spoke with authority, not with sanitized officiality. Just because something is prevailing or popular doesn't mean that it is true. And if you want revival, then ask what is true. Truth and goodness, they are their own rewards. Be someone who is transformed by the renewing of your mind, where you think clearly with the guidance of God and Scripture. Do not let the world think for you, and do not be deceived. There is joy in walking in the truth. So thank you for joining me. I'm Pastor J. Dylan Proctor. God love you, and have a blessed day.